America Ferrera is at the National Library in Tegucigalpa, where she has just discovered that her great-grandfather, General Gregorio Ferrera, was exiled from Honduras, the country whose freedom he fought to preserve.
So maybe they were tired of him starting revolutions and they exiled him?
Well, I think after the overthrow of Tosta in 1924, he was perhaps persona non grata for some number of years.
Wow.
By 1929, 5 years, it's a long time.
Yeah. I returned to my home country to blend in with my fellow citizens for only one purpose: Honduran peace. Wow, this is a very different tone.
Indeed.
He's coming back and saying, I come peacefully. I promise not to start any more revolutions.
Exactly.
I don't come to agitate for partisan politics, but to declare to all Hondurans that political divisions have been the origin of all of our mistakes, and that it's about time that only one flag, the flag of our country, be the symbol of our future designs. Upon returning to my daily work to make a modest living, I wish to be clear that I have no intention of assuming an official post. Hondurans, I call on thee to follow my example. May we all swear solemnly on the nation's altar to be united for our nation's peace and prosperity. Gregorio Ferrera. So he wants to come back as a civilian and kind of distance himself from party politics in a way.
In many ways, this is a document typical of a Latin American caudillo.
What does that mean?
So a caudillo is a powerful regional strongman, often with military ties, who was considered a man of the people.
After independence from Spain in the early 19th century, most Latin American countries saw near constant political instability. This insecurity led to the rise of caudillos. These charismatic military men gained support from local people and were seen as champions of the poor and marginalized populations. General Ferrera was a caudillo backed by the indigenous people of Intibucá, the region where he grew up, and they made up the majority of Ferrera's army.
With all of his beliefs and his ideologies and how he felt about Honduras, it's quite impressive, actually, that instead of coming back with guns a-blazing, he came out of those years with what seems to be a much more enlightened view of what he wanted for the country and how he could be a part of that. I'm super curious to know what he did after this.
There is really very little beyond this, but as we looked forward, I looked to U.S. documents because of the banana companies. It was a major economic hub. And so I found this in the U.S. archives.
It's confidential.
So this is a confidential note from the American consulate in Honduras to the Secretary of State.
Wow. 1930, October 18th. I have the honor to report that the electoral campaign in this country during the past week has become much more acrimonious.
So congressional elections are taking place.
Okay.
Vicente Mejia Colindres, the liberal, is still president. But in the congressional elections, it appears that the nationalists are going to win.
Right.
And that may be a springboard for the nationalists to win the presidency in the upcoming presidential elections.
The recent reports regarding General Ferrera, however, are disquieting. This legation received information from Colonel Maloney that he fears trouble from Ferrera in the event that his candidates are defeated at the polls. Maloney reports that General Ferrera has at present in his possession at least 200 rifles, 5 machine guns with ammunition, and about 1,000 grenades. Wow.
America Ferrera is in Tegucigalpa, Honduras at the National Library. She has just discovered that her great-grandfather, General Ferrera, has a stockpile of ammunition in his possession and is ready to use force if the candidate he's backing for president does not win.
This is not even a year after the I come in peace letter.
Correct.
Okay. General Carillas, the leader of the Nationalist Party, gave me his views on the campaign. To my question, Why is not Ferrera prevented from disturbing the peace? He replied, Ferrera is a very difficult person to control. He's very temperamental. Nevertheless, I believe Carillas could restrain Ferrera if he were willing to lose his support. Carillas belongs to the Nationalist Party.
Correct.
And the incumbent president is a liberal.
Is a liberal.
Which means Ferrera was supporting the Nationalist Party.
That's what it looks like.
Interesting. What I'm trying to understand is, was this shift in loyalty to the Nationalist Party a contradiction or a betrayal of his stance to be loyal to the people?
Let's go on in the document and maybe we can get some more information.
The minister asked me, so that would be the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Correct, the Honduran one.
Okay. Asked me informally to urge the United Fruit Company to exert its powerful influence with Ferrera to prevent him starting a revolt against the government. As I have mentioned in former dispatches, the United Fruit Company is financing Ferrera in a small banana and cattle business venture, and in this and other ways, he is under obligations to the company. Wow. Very complicated.
Very complicated.
So, whereas before it seemed so clear what he was standing for, and he'd go to the ends of the earth and he'd fight as many wars as it took to stand for that idealism, by the time he's 50, he's now running this venture backed by the United Fruit Company. And it seems that they believe that they have him under their thumb in terms of, well, if we support you, then you do what we say.
It's important to understand that the United Fruit Company is now the sole player in terms of the international banana trade. That means they have monopoly power. But also, we're in the moment of the Great Depression. The global economy is in crisis, and that is what Ferrera seems to be navigating. And so it makes it difficult for us to know if it's an effort to try to figure out how to continue to support his own people and his own interests.
Yeah. You know, if Ferrera was a tool of the corporation, I can't imagine that there would be this much trepidation over which way he would go.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
So now we have here an original document.
Oh. The body of General Ferrera was taken to San Pedro Sula and given to his wife and children. This was in 1931. So he was dead a year later. So he was 50 when he died.
Yes.
Today, between 1 and 2 p.m., a 2-hour clash between army troops resulted in General Ferrera and Humberto Rivas' death. I have ordered medical doctors go immediately to inject the body and bring it back to this city to be identified, and by so doing, dispel any doubt that the principal enemy of Honduran peace has died. Rest assured that with the death of the Intibucan leader, the foundations for peaceful Honduras will be firmly established. Wow. So this is a national newspaper that probably the people in power had control over the perspective of the stories.
Probably, yes.
And their perspective was that Ferrera was a principal enemy of Honduran peace, which means that he was fighting against the government once again?
Absolutely. The liberals were in power, so he's fighting against the liberal army at this point.
Right. I guess the big unanswered question is still whether or not all of this fighting was in fact driven by what was in the best interest of the people, or whether it was about his own best interests.
I wanted to bring us to a new document where we could look at that question.
Okay.
And this is from an anthropologist who worked in the region of the Intibucá in the early 1960s.
So this is an interview with a man named Romulo Gomez, who fought with my great-grandfather.
With Ferrera, a member of the Intibucá.
That's really amazing.